Hello, my name is Father Tighe, and this is our 47th segment of our journey of faith in the light of the cross. And in this segment, we go the more excellent way that Paul was talking about the mystery of love, and we try to understand it. So thank you for joining us, and we go to our first slide, the theme. But the greatest gift is love, for whereas knowledge inflates, love upbuilds. Now, the mystery of love is important because it cannot be measured, because there's something infinite about it, limitless and boundless. And it is set off and is communicated through the imagination, which is limitless and boundless and very hard to define. And so social scientists and people who try to study them cannot confine them to define them. But we can touch you and set off something in you that you do understand, even though you don't know why. So we go on to our next screen, and we read the first 3 verses of chapter 13 on love. If I speak with angelic tongues but have not love, I am a noisy gang and a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give away all I own, but have not love, I have nothing. Let us go on to the next screen. To better understand love, it helps us to know why the 70 translators of the Old Testament in 275 BC, 3 centuries before Christ, translated the Hebrew aheb, which means love in Hebrew, as agape, and not eros, which the Greeks considered the main word for love. Greek had 3 words for love: eros, which is sexual love, which we get in the English, the erotic. And this is really basically porneia, but Plato and Aristotle do something wondrous with it. Philein is civil, dutiful friendships, okay? And this is where we get the word Philadelphia. Philos means love of the brothers, so the city of brotherly love. The last one, agape, is a weak word, hardly ever used in Greek, but it had a preference for a particular love. And the Jewish translators liked this because they saw the God of Israel with a particular love for them and a preference for them, and he wanted them to be particular about their love, and then they build on it. But now we want to go back to eros and see what Plato and Aristotle did with it. Eros was communion with the goddess Iran, a transcendent porneia that released daemons. And I translated that to angels because daemons originally were almost like angels, and they were good angels. It means a good feeling, a fulfilling feeling. But then the Jews came along and called them demons, which means evil spirits. And that changed everything. Greeks believed that human reflection was the greatest gift man could have. We could reflect on who we are and where we're going. Yet Eros lifted man to an ecstasy and bliss that overwhelmed reflection. You lost your ability to think. You were just lifted up into this ecstasy. And remember, ecstasy means stand beyond, this transcendent order. And they thought this was normal and good. Now, the Jews, on the other hand, believed in surrender to God's law in order to enlighten the mind and the heart. So it wasn't obliterate them and lift you up in an ecstasy, but an ecstasy was legitimate only if it enlightened your mind and heart. We go on to our next screen. Plato saw in Greek mysteries erotic concepts. See, concepts, he lifts it up and he says, this is philosophical. Why are we so attracted? And he spiritualized them. He says, it's the world beyond. And remember, Plato was famous for talking about we are just forms and shadows of this great mystery beyond. Erin's body, the beauty of Erin, the goddess, was a sign of divine beauty. So Plato goes in and says, why is this enormous attraction for the beauty of that statue of that beautiful woman? He said it's because it's a sign of divine beauty. There's a divine beauty even higher than Erin that we're longing to participate in. And beauty is very important to us. We'll see it in the future. Thus, Eros rose above the sensual when Plato and Aristotle said, why do we have these feelings and intuitions? What is it all about? The Jews feared images and the imagination. Remember, Yetzer is translated as imagination, so they suppressed it. Plato and Aristotle longed for limitless life and boundless love. They were not afraid. of this world beyond this world, this transcendent world, which the Jews were afraid of. And they wanted to experience it. And this is where they agree with Christ. He sets us free, and our Yetzer, our imagination, free to touch the world beyond this world. And boundless love somehow through sexual images. Till day of the Lord, Jews observed limits and boundaries of law. So limits and boundaries suppress the imagination. You shall have no images before me. No images that set the Yetzer free and the demons of this world. Now we go on to our next screen, and we see 70 Jewish translators saw God's love enlightening mind, making it more aware and concerned for others. It didn't obliterate you and take you up into this ecstasy that separated you from others. It makes spouses more aware in marital sex. So remember, the Jewish emphasized that you, in duty, in your love for God, you become more aware and concerned about your wife and family. So sexuality that segregated you from your feelings and obliterated your mind and separated you from other people was no good. Paul makes Christian distinctions. The light of cross enlightens believers to see image and beauty of God in broken people. This is the great Christian mystery. The Greeks looked for this beauty that pleased the eyes. And Jesus comes along and he says, what is the beauty that touches your soul through your eyes? That's the most important thing. And if you can see the beauty of God in the broken body on the cross, can you see it in other broken people? Which also may mean your spouse, your broken husband or wife, which complicates human love and human sexuality, because you're dealing with human brokenness. And that's the Christian mystery, bringing together the Jew and the Greek thinking in the first century. It says there, the beauty of God in broken people, and makes believers aware that we suffer and rejoice with one another in the body of Christ. What is this mystery? What is this ecstasy? What is this transcendent experience? All right, we go on to our next screen. Whereas Greeks longed for ecstasy beyond heaven and earth, they wanted to be lifted up beyond this world. Jews looked to fulfillment that united heaven and earth. Agape love empowers each person to overcome fears and feelings of rejection. Where does this come from? See, the Jews were based in original sin. They didn't, Plato and Aristotle didn't have anything about original sin. Only the Jews did. And what was the effect of original sin? Adam and Eve felt rejected and abandoned by God. And that's the basic feelings of sin that plague our lives. And Jesus' love comes to overcome those feelings, so as to build up the body. It's so hard to build the body when we have these fears and feelings of rejection and abandonment. Jesus is the Lamb and the umbilical cord uniting in heaven and earth. How did he do it? He accepted all the rejection and abandonment that the world can give, revealing the limitless life and boundless love of God. So love and imagination does go beyond, but the imagination through the cross, through one another, the image and likeness of God in one another, touches something in our soul and our mind that we understand, and I hope you understand. We go on to our next screen. Yetzer, the imagination, is a gift of God to upbuild the kingdom. But in sinful world, it releases demons. This is the tragedy. So Jews suppressed it. Yetzer upbuilds kingdom only in surrender to sharing body and blood of Christ. That's what Paul was emphasizing in chapters 10, 11, and 12. You've got to keep your focus on the cross and the Eucharistic meal that we celebrate. Yetzer enlightens mind and sharpens the senses with love, willing to give up rights and sacrifice to witness divine love that overcomes rejection and abandonment. What a miracle. What a great good news. Now we go on to our next screen. Love never fails. Prophecy and tongues will cease. We now know partially, but then perfectly. Faith, hope, and love abide, but the greatest of these is love. And I hope you feel God's love touching your life through these holy words. We go on to our last theme. But the greatest of these is love, for whereas love inflates, love upbuilds. I hope God's enlivening you and fulfilling you to want to go out and work to upbuild God's kingdom, to pull the pieces of your life, but the whole church together. Thank you for joining us for this 47th segment. Continue with us as we bring Paul's theology together in segment 48. So thank you so much for joining us.